Would you believe me if I told you I had been to North Korea, but I never got a North Korean visa or stamp in my passport? Technically I did, and here's how I managed to do it legally. On the morning of 15th June 2024, my mom and I took the train from Dalian, my birth city, to the neighboring city of Dandong, right on the border with North Korea. This train station brings back a lot of memories for myself, as my family would always take a train from Tianjin to Dalian and back through this station more than 10 years ago. This station also carries significance important to the history of the city. Going to this station once again after so many years, it looks so familiar yet so new at the same time. A lot of things have been updated as many Chinese cities are developing at rapid speeds, way faster than I can catch. We went down to the platform after the platform gates opened, and there it was, a bullet train to take us from Dalian to Dandong. My mom and I traveled light for this 3-day trip to Dandong and Shenyang. We each only carried a backpack and no luggage case or anything heavy. Setting off on this journey in the early morning, we arrived at Dandong Station not long after. The layout of Dandong Station is interesting, as domestic trains in China that pass through the station will need to turn back to go to their next destination, as going straight forward will be for international trains only into North Korea. Anyways, we exited the station and took a few pictures outside the station square, then activated a bus card on Alipay and took a bus to the Korean War Memorial Museum. Compared to Dalian, Dandong is a smaller city with slightly less developed transportation systems. In this city, there are no metro or tram lines, only bus services, but even those can't actually get close to the museum. We had to walk almost a full kilometer to the destination. On the way, we passed by a People's Air Defense Monument built to commemorate and remember the US bombing of Dandong, which began months before China joined the Korean War. As North Korea used to be communist when they were first founded, they allied with the Soviet Union and the newly formed People's Republic of China. Then in 1950, the Korean War began, and with North Korea attempting to reunify the entire peninsula under their rule, quickly taking over almost all of South Korea. And when South Korea was on the brink of losing almost all their territory, the US and UN forces landed in Korea in July, pushing the North Korean forces back up north, and almost took over their entire territory by November. During this period, since August, US warplanes bombed North Korean territories, and some even crossed the Yalu River into China and bombed cities like Dandong, destroying thousands of homes and also killing hundreds of civilians. China was not technologically advanced in terms of air defense technology, and many Chinese coastal cities in the southeast had suffered bombings from the Kuomintang, which retreated to Taiwan after they lost the civil war in the mainland, but continued to send planes and drop bombs on cities under communist control. Then soon after, China, who was initially not involved in the Korean War, was also being bombed by the US, which led to civilian casualties and no apologies from the US. When all diplomatic methods had been exhausted, China finally joined the Korean War in 1950 and beat the US and UN forces back to approximately where the original 38th parallel was in less than 3 months. After that, no country ever bombed or air raided China ever again, and China also went on to rapidly develop air defense technology. This monument stands here as a reminder of how China isn't strong, others will always try to bully Chinese people and test our patience and limits, and dare to bomb China and cause civilian deaths without fearing retaliation, even when China is just a passerby or uninvolved neighbor. Just like how because Syria and Lebanon aren't strong, Israel can bomb them and the international community only dares to condemn them but not perform any action that physically stops them from bombing Syria and Lebanon while continuing to conduct genocide in Palestine. Anyways, back to the video. The Korean War Museum, officially called the Memorial of the War to Resist US Aggression and Aid Korea, 抗美援朝纪念馆, is the only official museum about the Korean War in all of China. Completed in 1958, rebuilt and expanded in 1993, and again refurbished and reopened in 2020. First, we came across a calligraphy by Chairman Mao Zedong that reads 抗美援朝保家卫国, resist the US, aid Korea, and protect our country, meaning China. Then the stairs go up to a hill to a tower, a memorial tower with calligraphy by later President Deng Xiaoping that reads 抗美援朝纪念塔, memorial tower of resisting the US and aiding Korea. Then the main square, and on the side are a few pieces of artillery used by the People's Volunteer Army. Most of these artillery guns were captured from the Japanese during World War II, originally by the Kuomintang, then recaptured by the People's Liberation Army in the Chinese Civil War. Some were US-made military, also originally used by the KMT, while some other US-made artillery were also captured by the PVA during the Korean War. Then entering the hall, the first thing that greets us is the bronze statue of Mao Zedong shaking hands with a young Kim Il-sung against a very majestic background of bronze murals depicting the People's Volunteer Army from China and Korean People's Army of DPRK in action together. It is very obviously a history and military museum, and it depicts military statistics. For example, this one compared the amount of quality of equipment of the PVA with the US Army on the battlefield. You don't even need to understand Chinese to look at this graph, for example. Just look at the numbers and diagrams. On the left is the US Army strength with their loads of advanced military equipment, while on the right is the Chinese PVA strength with a lot of equipment numbering at 0. In other parts of the museum, they display pictures of the aftermath of the US bombing of Dandong and indiscriminate targeting of civilians and buildings. Pictured here are army engineers repairing broken bridges in ice-cold rivers. Those of you who have watched movies or documentaries about the Korean War will know that North Korea in winter is literally the North Pole, with temperatures easily reaching below -20 degrees Celsius or even -30. So Chinese soldiers ill-equipped with less advanced equipment could only rely on their own will to survive, defeat the enemy, bring victory, and protect their motherland. I really love this propaganda displaying the US invaders as a green goblin with a map of China invasion plan exposed. I mean, in those contexts, it was really hard to believe the US had no plans to continue pushing north into China after defeating North Korea, when they were constantly bombing and harassing cities and villages in China before China joined the Korean War. On a lighter note, here is an exhibition of a few musical instruments that Chinese soldiers brought to the battlefield to entertain themselves. Appears to be an erhu, a two-string bowed instrument, or some variation of huqin that's commonly referred to as the Chinese equivalent of the violin. Then a sanxian, a three-string plucked instrument, and also a standard Western violin on the left. Oh, and also don't forget the suona in the bottom left. That's a very loud and piercing wind instrument that combines the quality of an oboe and trumpet. And also this yangqin, a dulcimer that's related to the piano with its cover engraved using a mix of simplified and traditional Chinese characters. Pretty interesting. And this propaganda poster of a Chinese soldier playing the accordion, possibly intentionally drawn with his hands playing in this position to point a middle finger, like literally saying fuck you to the US invaders. I love this poster. I think I should get a physical copy, like paste it on my wall or print it on a postcard. Other than these, just a lot of maps, like this one depicting the Battle of Kumsong, and this one depicting the original US proposed DMZ in 1951 in blue dashed lines that was overridden by the PVA-KPA counteroffensive that pushed the front lines to the modern DMZ that has not changed since the signing of the armistice in 1953. Other than those, just a lot of banners showing resolution in resisting the US and aiding DPRK, and also pictures showing how the Chinese soldiers protected the Korean civilians from bombing, protected the farmers' crops by setting up physical barriers to prevent their men from accidentally stepping into the farmers' fields and destroying plants, and also Korean civilians welcoming and celebrating together with the PVA and also giving valuable gifts to Chinese soldiers. The last thing that we saw in this museum was this panorama, a 3D recreation of what the battlefield in Korea looked like. Just keep in mind that this Korean War Museum was built to preserve the Chinese POV of the war, which might be different and have details that don't align with North or South Korea or the other participants' POV. History is subjective, I'm not picking any sides, just visited to take a look at history from the place it happened and get a feel for it myself. After exiting the museum, we saw a park full of military vehicles and artillery guns developed by China after the Korean War, signifying that China rapidly improved and developed their defense and technology and was beginning to catch up and in a few decades overtake most of the world. Then we headed to the bus stop, yes, a few hundred meters outside the museum entrance, to take a bus to the road beside the Yalu River. But none of the bus services went directly to that road, so we just took to a bus stop 2 streets before that and walked over. Oh, by the way, the translator probably fucked up the bus stop sign when translating to Korean, as first of all, it looks like a word-for-word translation from Chinese into Sino-Korean instead of Korean grammar Korean. But they also use the Korean word Buk, which means north, which is an abbreviation of Bukhan, the South Korean standard name for North Korea, instead of Jo, which stands for Joseon, the Chinese and North Korean standard name for North Korea. This might create some problems, but it's a minor one. So we took the bus and had a simple simple light lunch with a few dumplings, then walk past a Goryeo street containing Korean shops and restaurants, and possibly brands coming from North Korea. Then we pass by a restaurant named Ongryu Yuliu, named after the Ongryu Guan in Pyongyang, a restaurant famous for authentic Korean cold noodles, naengmyeon or naengmyeon. This is most likely one of their international branches, I'm not exactly sure. But we already ate, so we didn't enter and we just walked until we reached the road located right at the Yalu River, separating China and North Korea.
Can you believe it, guys? This is North Korea. I'm facing North Korea right now.
Behind me, across the Yalu River, is the North Korean city of Sinuiju. It looked like a small but well-developed city, possibly only on the surface, but still managing to at least look normal to the outside. There's this very iconic circular brick-covered building with a huge text Ilshimdangyol visible above. It appears to be a newly built residential building for economically better-off citizens, and is around only 5 years old. This kinda did surprise me a little bit, but not too much, because North Korea is not a very rich country, but at least has the means to put on a good enough look for outsiders. The modern buildings in Sinuiju, for example. Now, between Dandong and Sinuiju, there are 2 bridges, actually 2.5, 2.5. The 2 bridges are one railway bridge that extends from the Dandong railway station into Sinuiju, called the Sino-Korean Friendship Bridge, 中朝友谊大桥. The second bridge, completed in 2016 and located further south from Dandong City, is called the New Yalu River Bridge, 新雅鲁江大桥, intended for vehicular traffic but has not been opened yet. Then the half a bridge is the Yalu River Broken Bridge, located right next to the railway bridge, which we will be visiting later. First, we will be taking a boat ride on the Yalu River and observing North Korea close up. This is the part where we actually cross into the North Korean waters. You see, the Yalu River is the border between China and North Korea, who signed a treaty with each other during the 1960s to use the middle of the river as the de jure border, but de facto, both countries' ships are allowed to use each other's half of the waterway, so both countries' officially registered ships have legal rights to use and travel the entire width of the Yalu River. Because of this technicality, Chinese boats are allowed to cross over to the North Korean half of the river and vice versa, as long as they don't make an unauthorized landing on the other side. So the boat sped off along the river and crossed the middle line. We are officially in North Korean waters. There, I had been to North Korean waters legally, without stepping on North Korean land, but still technically counts as me having been to North Korea. Yeah, I went to North Korea without being in North Korea, but technically on North Korea? I remember we were like 3/4 of the way through the river, with only probably 100 meters separating us from North Korean land. We passed by a North Korean working boat, probably fishing or doing some drilling or engineering. I couldn't see clearly, but I could see that was a North Korean flag. We also saw a very run-down village further up the river, and it felt surreal. The village houses looked like they were from a movie depicting pre-World War II times, and some windows didn't have glass. In this remote part of an already not very rich but struggling to impress the world country, even glass windows are a luxury, even though they're basically a necessity, especially for winter weather. Life must be hard over on the other side. It's just a river not more than a kilometer wide, but the difference between Dandong, a tier 3 city in China, and Sinuiju, which lags behind in development by decades, is really visible. It makes me lost in deep thought how China's success radiates to hundreds of cities and towns, from the big cities to those located inland or on the border, while North Korea has tried so many times but failed. It's really worth thinking and evaluating about. Soon the boat turned around and brought us back to the Chinese side of the river, passing by the railway bridge and the broken bridge, then saying hello to the Ilshimdangyol building on the other side again, and ending its journey. We then went on to the Yalu River Broken Bridge, which was constructed in 1911 by Japanese imperialist occupiers. It was a technological marvel of its time, as it could be rotated to allow taller ships to sail through, as the Yalu River used to be a waterway for big ships carrying goods that parked by ports by the river. Then in 1937, Japan also built another bridge which became the modern railway bridge, the Sino-Korean Friendship Bridge. Bridge. Shortly before and during the Korean War, the US warplanes were constantly bombing Dandong and destroyed the now broken bridge, limiting Chinese supplies to North Korea through Dandong to only one railway bridge. Many years after the armistice, China repaired their side of the bridge, while the North Korean side is left in disrepair, forming a stark contrast and also a visual depiction of the de jure China-DPRK border through the river. Now, the broken bridge has become a tourist attraction for history nerds like myself to visit. After visiting, I went to a store and bought a local banana-flavored sparkling drink called 大香蕉.
大香蕉，一条大香蕉，你的感觉真的很奇妙，飘呀飘，摇呀摇，你的感觉神魂颠倒。
It tasted great. Unfortunately, it was only available in Dandong and nowhere else. Then we went to check in to our hostel located right behind the streets. In the evening, we went out again and came to the Andong Old Street, Andong Laojie, with many food stalls and a stage for performances. We ate at a food stall at 大肚子院 with this delicious dessert that I forgot the name of, but would definitely return to try it again. That was all for the dinner. This street is just a food and entertainment street, and after eating and watching a few stage performances, we left and walked back to our hostel. We first turned into a street that led to the road right at the side of the Yalu River. Then we glanced across at the other side. It was pitch dark, with almost nothing visible to the eye except a few residential buildings with lights on, and the faint red light coming from the Ilshim Dangyol building. The difference between China and North Korea is even more visible during the night, and it feels so surreal. But after being in this place and seeing it for myself, I have only confirmed that this is the reality. Take the truth in as knowledge, think about it however I want, reflect on it as much as I need, and move on. The next day, we would be heading to another location to see North Korea from Dandong. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe to my channel, and also leave some comments. Have you been to North Korea or on the border with North Korea? What do you think of anything mentioned in this video or about North Korea? Leave your thoughts down there. And as always, please stay tuned. I'll show you more angles of North Korea in my next video.